I'm Van.
I'm Sorry.
That's Booby.
And Jelpy and Ghosty.
And Tubi.
Yeah.
100,000 subscribers! I don't care. Who's grinding? We out here grinding. It's a special song. This is MIND of HOPSIN 7. This song has been requested for like a year and a half. I forgot the name of the individual, but this guy, there's a guy who's like, you gotta check out MIND of HOPSIN, you gotta check out MIND of HOPSIN, you gotta check it out.
Faithfully requesting it.
So here it is, MIND of HOPSIN 7. If you want one of these shirts, dear listener, there's a little thingamajiggy. I don't know how you get it. Sorry knows how you get it. So
down below, you should see a bar that you can click on to go right there, or you can just click the link in the description and go to our Teespring. There's a couple of shirt designs.
And then once you get the shirt, send us a picture so we can see what you look like.
I almost want to create a separate email for that.
We can feature you in our
videos.
The world is the village.
Yes.
Did I say for timely, topical, political commentary? You can hit us up at Middle America with Vin and Sorry. Yeah, so we're gonna try something new. We usually don't do hip hop on this channel, but people are really asking us for it.
So it was more than one person?
Yeah, it was more than one person, but there's one particular person who kept the faith and wouldn't give up on it. So
there's a couple people doing that for a few different things.
For on metal songs. So here we are, MIND of HOPSIN 7.
Ready?
Let go.
Anybody I might alarm. Life is a tour, I sit and ride along, taking some notes and then I write the songs. I'm staring down the road, my life is gone. Is this where I belong? Is it wrong to not believe in right and wrong? My mental state is fucking me up and I cried upon while asking you for some answers, but we don't have that type of bond. Now my desire's gone, and with the way that I've been living lately, if I died right now, you turn the fire on. Sick of this bullshit, niggas call me a sellout, cause I hopped in Christianity so strongly then I fell out. Now I'm avoiding questions like a scared dog with his tail down, feeling so damn humiliated cause they looking at me like I'm hellbound. What story should I tell now? I'll just expose the truth. I'm so close to the fucking edge, I should be close to you. But who the fuck are you? You never show the proof. And I'm only fucking human, yo, what am I supposed to do? There's way too many different religions with vivid descriptions, begging all fucking men and women to listen. I can't even beat my dick without getting convicted. These ain't wicked decisions, I got different intentions. I've been itching to get it, I've been giving assistance, but the whole fucking system is twisted. Now I'm dealing with this backlash because Marcus isn't a Christian, and I've been told that my sinful life is an addiction, but I can't buy it. It's just too hard to stand beside it. I need an answer, humans can't provide it. I look at the earth, the sun, and I can tell a genius man designed it. It's truly mind-blowing, I can't deny it. Is heaven real? Is it fake? Is it really how I fantasize it? Where's the Holy Ghost at? How long does it take a man to find it? My mind's a non-stop tape playing and I can't rewind it. You gave me the Bible and expect me not to analyze it? I'm frustrated and you provoked it. I'm not reading that motherfucking book because a human wrote it. I have a fucking brain, you should know it. You gave it to me to think, to avoid every useless moment. It was a mission that I had to abort, cause humans be lying with such an inaccurate source. It's gonna be hard to put me back on the course. Next Jehovah's Witness to come on my porch, I swear I'm slamming the door. A lot of folks believe it though, but I'm not surprised. Humans are fucking dumb, still thinking that Pac's alive. I ain't trying to take your legacy and torture down. I'm just saying, I ain't heard shit from the horse's mouth. Just sheep always telling stories of older guys who were notarized by you and you finally vocalized. Now I'm supposed to bow my head and close my eyes and somehow let the Holy Ghost arise? Sounds like a fucking poltergeist. Show yourself and the boom is done. Every rumor's gone, I no longer doubt the shit, you're the one. I'll admit that my sinful ways were stupid fun, and all my old habits can hop on top of a roof to plunge. I donate to a charity that could use the funds. Fuck the club instead of bitches, I'd hang with a group of nuns. And everyone I ran into would know what I came to do. I wouldn't take a step unless it was in the name of you. I hate the fact that I have to believe you haven't been chatting with me like you did Adam and Eve. And I ain't seen no fucking talking snake unravel from trees with an apple to eat. That shit never happens to me. I don't know if you do or don't exist. It's driving me crazy, send your condolences. This is me reaching to you, so don't forget. If hell is truly a pit of fire and I get thrown in it, I'ma probably regret the fact that I ever wrote this shit. My gut feeling says it's all fake. I hate to say it, but fuck it, shit, I done lost faith. This isn't a small phase, my perspectives all changed. My thoughts just keep picking shit apart all day. And in my mind, I make perfect sense. If you aren't real, then all my prayers aren't worth a cent. That will mean that I can just make up what my purpose is. And I can sit in church and just say fuck in the services. Man, what if Jesus was a facade? Then that would mean the government's God. I feel like they've been brainwashing us with a lot, so much that we don't even notice that we're stuck in the box. Man, everything is what if. Why is it always what if? Planet Earth, what if? The universe, what if? My sacrifice, what if? My afterlife, what if? Every fucking thing that deals with you is fucking suspect. I'm fucking done. I'm fucking done. This is my fucking life and I'm living it. I'm having fun. If you really care for me, prove that I need to live carefully. But I'll be damned if I put my own pleasure aside for an afterlife that isn't even guaranteed. We are you, and you're us. Stop playing games. My life's all I got, and heaven is all in my brain. And when I feel I'm in hell, my ideas are what get me through pain. Do as you please, and I'll just do me. I'm a human, I'll stay in my lane. Ill mind. It's us, mind, power. Live life, mind, power. It's us, mind, power. Live life, mind, power.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. Well,
emotional.
That makes sense as to why people were telling
Yeah.
us to watch this video. He's
really good. I really like
what
it.
I think hip hop has as an advantage of an art form is that you can say a lot in 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because the emphasis on hip hop is about lyricism, especially this type of rap. You know, not that mumble rap.
Yeah. Wow, this is really good.
The actual rap where somebody's so it's
like I was peeking into someone's private time because it was a prayer.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is that, you know, we're doing the prayer thing in the Bible Boogies, and this is a lot about this is all a prayer. This is somebody's really.
It was so real.
Really raw and deep struggle with God, and it's a prayer, and it's one of those things where it's a prayer probably for millions of people.
Yep.
Because a lot of people go through this stuff.
I thought it was interesting when he said, like, basically, like, if I end up in hell, I'm probably gonna regret saying all this. But it's like all this might be, you know, what ends up keeping him out of hell. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is real raw honesty, and that's the way it should be. Yeah.
So I guess he used to be a Christian, and then he lost his faith, and he's going back and forth with God, which is really, really interesting.
And where he was in a desert.
Yeah.
Tying a white cloth around his head.
Yeah. There's a lot of.
There's so much significance.
A lot of deep symbolism there.
And he goes off with a limp. I mean, I don't know if he really has a limp in real life, but that just played into the whole thing.
So there's a couple things. Like, one is the idea that if God appeared to him, then he would, what do you say? He'd stop clubbing and live with a bunch of nuns.
Yeah, he wouldn't do anything unless God told him to do it.
If God appeared to him, he says, all my whole habits can hop on top of a roof to plunge. I'll donate to a charity that could use the funds. Fuck the club instead of bitches. I'd hang with a group of nuns and everyone I ran into would, yada, yada, yada.
I wouldn't take a step unless it was in the name of you.
Yeah. He says, show yourself, and then boom, it's done.
Yeah.
And I think, we were talking to Seth Andrews one time. I said, Seth, if the sky opened up and all the clouds parted and this giant, mystically beautiful creature came down and told you everything about your life and all that, and then said, I am Yahweh, how would you know definitively that that was actually Yahweh, or if it was a space alien who knew what everybody thought of Yahweh and had been observing you your entire life, and they had, they're advanced, so they have all these quantum records of you, and they're able to regurgitate them back to you. How do you know that that wouldn't be? He said, I wouldn't know. And he goes, and then he basically said, well, if God knew, if God knows me, then he would know what would constitute proof for me. So basically what he said was he had no real way, when you asked for proof, he had no real way to explain how it could be proof. And, I had another friend tell me, well, if he did something that violated was inexplicable, like scientifically, or violated, I said, well, how do you explain the origin of life from non-life or consciousness from non-consciousness? There are theories and all that, but there's no definitive. And he goes, well, we have no answer for that. And I said, okay, well, it happened, so that by that definition, it's a miracle, isn't it? And then he went, God of the gaps! And I said, okay, so then how could God prove himself to you? Because anything that you could do that would classify as a miracle, you could just fall back on God of the gaps.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think, this isn't necessarily a criticism as much as I think it's a blind spot where there's just sort of like people of faith believe because they choose to believe. And people like this don't believe because they can't be, they haven't been convinced. And there isn't the thought category of, well, maybe I can't be convinced because I don't want to be. Now, again, in this song, I can't put that necessarily on this guy because I haven't had a conversation with him. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I do think that there are people, like Ian, in my mind, I do believe that if God showed up to Ian in his room or something, that Ian would be a Christian. I do believe that. And I think that's true for a couple of my friends. But then there's other people where it's like, this idea that we're just androids and we're just information processing machines, and that's how we make decisions about ultimate issues in our worldview, I think is lacking in awareness. Like, on both sides. Like, I've run into Christians like, I believe because, it takes more faith to be an atheist or whatever. And they're trying to, like, whittle down their belief into, I believe because of these, like, objective syllogisms. Well, that's part of it. You also believe because you want to believe.
Right.
And,
because there's always something that you don't understand about it. Like, I flick on the light switch and I, have electricity. I really don't understand how that works or how it gets there. I have like a basic understanding of it.
Yeah.
But I believe it's going to go on when I flick the light switch. But there's always everything that there's parts of it that you don't really understand. And so
the vast majority of our life operates on some sort of faith in the unknown. Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing, like, so, like, I see Christians and they're like, it's like, it's, evidentialist versus presuppositionalist stuff. I'm not really going to get into that, but they present their faith as like, it's only like a science sort of experiment of why they became a Christian, and certainly there are there are historical things you can look at, the resurrection, for example, and the phenomenon that happened with the Jesus movement that never happened before or since, especially considering there were previous messianic claimants and yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, the Christian faith is a faith. But what happens on the other side though is that, and I kind of did this. I kind of did this experiment in another forum where I was like, oh, you believe in the Big Bang? And they said, yes. I said, were you there? They said, no. And I said, okay, so why do you believe in it? They go, oh, this and this scientist. And I'm like, well, have you seen any of these? Have you even read any of these papers? Then I posted something about like, it was a scholarly article, and the guy basically said 85% of the peer-reviewed scientific journals are fallacious. And this guy himself was, as a matter of fact, his PhD was in data analysis.
Yep.
So when this guy is saying, and I can get that to you if you, we'll probably put the link in there. So when this guy is saying like 85% of these things are bunk, so when people come to me, they go, well, I believe in science because it's peer reviewed and da-da-da-da-da. It's like, you trust what these people are saying. You haven't even been in the vicinity of an atom collider and all. Like, come on. Like, these are all, you put faith in these people. So when he's saying, like, I can't believe in the Bible is written by people, it's like, okay, I get it. Right? Like, aside from the theological debates about plenary inspiration, the other side of that, though, is like, if you say science, right? And he didn't necessarily say science here, so I'm like dealing with him, but I'm also dealing with like interactions I've had. If you say science, what all you're doing is moving the goalpost from a group of old people to another group of people that you've never met, that you don't know, and the vast majority of people who say scientists say X can never quote me with science. Like, there's Alec, and he's actually done, he's an actual scientist, and he's doing what he does. But like, there are massive fields of science that he just has to take on by faith because he doesn't have the time. He's specializing in one form of science. He's not. So, and it's a strange thing to me, like, to get people. So I had this long discussion with one of my friends, and he was like, well, it's not faith, it's trust. I was like, bro, it's the same thing.
It's obviously the same thing.
Like, it's the same thing, and again, like I said, like, don't take it up with me. The guy's a PhD. He had the number. I think I'm lowballing the number. He basically said like 90% of the whatever. And there's a bunch of articles that talk about the fact that there have been many scientific journals, and the peer review study is not this infallible methodology that people pretend that it is. And my only point is to say, here's my point. If you're not omniscient, if you're not all-knowing, that means that you're going to have to take statements about reality by faith to some degree.
Of course.
Right?
We all do.
And to act as if like science, like I was having a theological discussion with somebody, and then one of my good friends posted some scientific journal, and I was just like, there are things that science cannot measure. So for example, the laws of logic do not have extension in time or space or matter. So you cannot measure the laws of logic in a science lab.
Right.
As a matter of fact, the entire scientific method is contingent on the laws of logic. So, which have no extension in time or space, are eternal and timeless and formless and etc. Which I would say the laws of logic are simply God letting us know how his mind works, but that's a separate issue. But the point is that it's a metaphysical reality that we all universally accept as true. We accept it so much that we base the scientific method off of it, right? So my point is simply to say that on the one hand, you have Christians who, I don't know, I have a hard time judging the motives of people, but I don't want to say pretend, because maybe they really believe it. There's Christians who believe that every single unbeliever is completely convinced that God exists and that Christianity is right, and they're just lying. And they're pretending. You have Christians that kind of fall on that side, and then you've got some of my atheist friends, I call them neo-atheists, that believe, they truly do believe that, quote, science can explain or that science is the best way to interpret all of reality. But science can only tell us what's happening in the physical universe.
Yeah.
It cannot tell us what's happening in the metaphysical universe.
Right, exactly.
So I was having a conversation, and I was just like looking, like, I'm not going to get into all the rest of it. But like I said, there's a theological, metaphysical discussion happening, and somebody posts some scientific thing, and I'm just like, okay, how do I deal with this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it cannot answer everything, and it definitely is not gonna. It would definitely had no bearing on the actual question that was being dealt with at all. But so I just feel like you have both of these things, and I think like I've got a lot more experience. I've been like swimming in neo-atheism, but I've seen a lot of correlative ideas in both groups, and fears even. Because I think, like, for a lot of Christians to admit, hey, maybe this guy or maybe this girl is genuinely seeking and is just not convinced.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think triggers a lot of fear in a lot of Christians.
Yeah.
And because they haven't fully reconciled their own faith to themselves, they are intimidated by a genuine person's unbelief and doubt, and or rejection thereof.
Well, I think it's the fear of, can I convince this person? Like, because if you believe something to be true, and you believe that you need to show somebody else it, and you feel inadequate to be able to show that, it's not a cool feeling.
Yeah, and I also think there's a big, well, if this person doesn't believe it, maybe the whole thing isn't real. Because a lot of people, and, you know, then that's why that's why people of the same belief systems, whatever the belief system is, generally flock around each other, because you want to hear that loop of affirmation, yeah, this is right, yada, 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 and that's why there's not a lot of conversation between Christians and atheists, or Christians or Muslims or whatever, because they want to be around people that only agree with them because they're insecure about their own faith.
Yep.
And hearing other people say, yeah, this is true, makes them
feel more secure.
Right, right. And so then you got a guy like that in a church who's, in my mind, from what I can see, is genuinely asking, genuinely saying, like, hey, I got some issues here.
Yeah.
And that guy in the church generally gets shut up.
Yep.
But on the other side, I've seen it on the other side too. I have seen, there's a particular young lady, she even converted to Christianity. I was in the atheist forum, she converted to Islam, and all her supposed friends, not all of them, but a good many of them, flipped on her immediately.
Oh.
Immediately.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, I'd sit and I would, you know, side message her and say, hey, don't let it get you. I mean, it obviously affected her because she's like, yo, you guys are my friends.
Yeah.
And I recognize the same fear from what I see in Christians. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it was the same fear from what, and I had a conversation where I said, look, you know, what you did, because she was, I don't want to say she was prominent, but, you know, she was a very respected
staple in the community.
Right, she's a staple in the community, and she converted to some of it was cultural, like how could you convert to Islam, start wearing a hijab. But the big thing was, and it was funny, like my atheist friends in the forum were calling me. They're like, and it was such a weird conversation. It was like when white people talk to me about black people. He was like, I don't understand how.
Oh no.
She seemed so smart. Like, these are literal conversations I had. Like, she seemed so intelligent. How could she, like I had a guy email. I felt bad because I couldn't recall the conversation. But the guy basically emailed me and said, I was interested in talking to you, then I found out you were religious. And he basically said, I can't talk to somebody who is stupid enough to fall for religion. So, no disrespect, yada, yada, yada. I felt bad because I didn't remember the conversation. Like, we literally talked to hundreds of people.
Yeah.
But it just made me chuckle.
Yeah.
Because, so it's like, my point is, like, I see the same sort of fearful Christians and fearful atheists. Like, I see the same sort of template and the same sort of mentality.
Yeah. I think fear looks the same no matter where you're at.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in between, and I think guys like Hopsin get, I don't want to say victimized, but they get, I'll just put victimized because I don't have a better word as a placeholder. They get victimized in the church because their questions, and then there is some hostility there, but what religious people don't understand is that hostility is coming from a place of absolute desperation. And most people don't like feeling weak, so they'll convert it into hostility, but it's really a plea and a cry to God to say, I'm losing faith here and this is the best that I can do. And I'm not sure that if God appeared to Hopsin, that Hopsin would convert and be a Christian. I'm not sure about that because I don't believe that any of us have full knowledge of ourselves. If we're not omniscient, then that also means that we don't know ourselves either. People believe that they know themselves, and that's why they'll look to religion and they'll say, oh, they'll try to guarantee, something about themselves by religion or to be non-religious, and so you get an identity in that. But my point is, I'm interpreting this as a genuine.
Oh, absolutely.
I would really like to know, and even if prove yourself, show yourself, even if he doesn't have the specific words to say, this is what's going on with me. I do think that it's a genuine, actual cry to God, and I do believe
absolutely.
that. I do believe that God.
He's looking up,
right?
But he's doing the, I definitely think that, and I think that because he's talking to God at some of the parts.
Yeah.
He says you and stuff like that.
I think for the vast majority of the
you gave me the Bible and expect me not to analyze it. I'm frustrated, and you provoked it. I'm not reading the book because a human wrote it.
Yeah.
I have a brain, you know it. Which it's interesting because he said, he talks about his mind and, that's what helps him through the pain.
Yeah.
And, obviously from our worldview, God is the one that gave him that mind. God is the one that gave him that brain. And so God is comforting him even in his pain.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know what I did here, but there was a specific lyric where he said,
last time we talked,
hold on, there it is. Okay, so he said, I look at the earth and the sun and I can tell a genius man designed it. It's truly mind-blowing, I can't deny it. So, that was really interesting, right? Because that's what I'm saying, it's people are so complex.
Yep.
Sometimes I'll hear my friends talk and they'll say, yeah, so evolution did this because people needed this and this and this. I'm like, you're talking about evolution as if it's a sentient being that has intentions and designs things.
Yeah, that's true.
I was like, and then I talked to one of my, I had a lot of conversations with people, and some of them are very, very fruitful. I was talking one time to a buddy of mine, and I said, okay, so when I see a car, I see an engine, everything works, and the carburetor, they all work together. Would it be irrational for me to assume that somebody designed that? And he basically told me that he's been to a car factory, so he has seen cars designed, so it's not irrational for him because he's seen it happen. And I said, my brother, the vast majority of us who have cars have never been to a car factory. So are you saying that it would be irrational for us to assume that the car was designed if we've never been to a factory? And secondly, does the fact that a car is designed in a factory mean that car was designed in a factory? What if it just blew up and came? And so, and then he eventually ended up saying that it was possible, it was not impossible that a rock could have written Shakespeare's, Romeo and Juliet. And at that point, I just said, okay. And
digress.
That was the end of the discussion. But I do think that this is one of the reasons I'm saying, this is an honest actor here. This is a guy who, it looks like he's saying, I can't rock with the details. I'm kind of agnostic. Definitely see that there's got to be some sort of design to this whole thing. And he's really, really struggling, and that's why I think the song was so emotional, and it's
it
because
really was. It was.
I think this song is risky for both groups because there's for example, they're just like there are different groups of Christians and different sort of mentalities you're going to get from various circles of Christians. Same works with atheism, especially modern atheism. You have what I call them, YouTube atheists, where they're just acerbic and they want to act like they're intellectually superior to everybody and yada yada yada, and they're just I've got a good friend. I've had a friend for almost 10 years now. And the guy is just, he's just acerbic and he's just hostile, and, we're still friends and stuff. And he'll say, there's no answer to this question. And then he gets the answer. He goes, that's a dumb answer, But my point is like, so I think like for that crowd of atheists that this song is dangerous too. Because this is sort of a heretical statement here.
Yeah.
Just like him dropping the F-bomb and all of that, a lot of Christians be like, oh, how could you say that to God?
Yeah.
Which I've said worse. But here when he says, like, there's got to be some genius or design behind the universe, not to mention the human body and things of that nature, he's like, that's a risky thing to say.
Yep.
Like, this is a song that can piss off both groups of people. And I don't, like, I can absolutely see somebody looking at this and saying, oh, he's going after Christians. But this is also something where, like, hey, man, like, your garden variety YouTube atheist would be offended by that line as well. It's truly mind-blowing. I can't deny it. That tells me the guy is an honest actor. Not to say that if you're not convinced that the world is designed, that you're a dishonest actor. I'm just saying this is an extremely difficult thing to say in our current seats and labels. So shout out to him for that. But it also seemed to me, so that was one major theme of the song. The other major theme of the song is just the conflict between pleasure and sin and the afterlife. Like, so he said something about, I can't beat off without feeling convicted. And he's angry about that. And then he said something about, he literally said, I'll be damned if I put my own pleasure aside, which is
for an afterlife that isn't even guaranteed.
Which is that's a double, right? I'll be damned.
Oh,
see what I'm saying?
yeah.
I missed it. Black people are very intelligent. If I put my own pleasure aside for an afterlife that isn't guaranteed. And, prove that I need to live carefully. And, that's why, we have man time with the boys and we talk about sex and sexuality and pornography, the whole 9 yards. I got one kid that could, his plan was he was going to bounce around a lot of girls and he's going to, do his thing and then settle down after a couple of years and then whatever. And I didn't really talk much about the afterlife. And the reason for that is because, especially when it comes to sex and sexuality, there's not a lot of threats about hellfire in connection with sex and sexuality. But there's a lot of really practical, real-world reasons for denying yourself pleasure. Like, so for example, I remember there was one time where this woman, she was like, I'm going to tell my daughter to have as much sex as she wants and to prioritize her pleasure above everything. That's what she said. And everybody was clapping for her and all this, and it was all, yay, empowerment. And I said, great. So if her husband is in the military and he gets deployed for 6 to 18 months, and she's got dudes over the house, like, is that something that you would be cool with? And she never answered the question because the answer is obvious, right? Like, so there are some very real world, and there's a million situations. Let's say the girl's got terminal cancer. Should the guy be able to run off and have as much pleasure as he wants while this girl's got terminal cancer? I think all of us rightly did not look favorably on this idea that possibly that Trump was cavorting with a porn star while his wife was pregnant. I think that was the whole thing. The idea that, I don't know what, the idea that happened, most of us would say that's a really scummy thing to do. So then all of us agree, at some degree there are limits to there are times when you should limit your own pleasure.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with an afterlife. Some of it just has to do with the fact that we recognize that sexuality is a very powerful thing. But what happens when people start talking about sexuality is they try to strip all the metaphysics out of it and just stay to the physicality part of it. When we're arguing for that, it makes a lot of sense. But then when we go into the actual real world, we automatically do the opposite thing based on certain circumstances. Like, you don't think it's good that the guy cheats on his wife while she has cancer. You don't think it's good that the woman cheats on her husband when he's fighting a war. Like, you don't, you know there are times when you should restrict your pleasure. So if we agree on that, then you say to yourself, okay, what are good reasons to restrict pleasure and what are not good reasons to restrict pleasure, right? And I think that that's a very important, that's something where I think in our modern age, people have not explored that question.
Yeah.
You know, because we're post-sexual revolution and, you know, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
But, of course, during the AIDS scare in the 80s, there was a very, very practical, real-world reason to restrict your pleasure, right? That's another one. I say this all the time, like, oh yeah, you think free sex is awesome, go check out the CDC. Check it out. And come back to me. So there are like metaphysical reasons for why you should restrict your pleasure, and there are also actual physical reasons for why you should restrict your pleasure. And then when you look at the world from that context, then the biblical injunctions against sexual immorality become a lot more practical in real world, and you don't have to worry about heaven. What I would say, the irony, and this was the best pitch I could give to the boys, was I said the irony is the more you go out and the lack of restriction on sexual pleasure ends up creating restrictions on sexual pleasure. So, for example, you've got to wear a condom. And I told the boys, I'm like, listen, guys, we're pretty straightforward. So I said, listen, sex is not nearly as fun with a condom as it is without one. It's just not. And my oldest is like, damn it! Those commercials were lying to you. He says, were those commercials lying to me? I said, Dorian, if it felt like normal, would they have to tell you that it did? Hello? That wouldn't be a selling point if it felt like normal. He's like, you're right. You know, so you end up actually, you know, I saw a very tragic post, but it was basically, this girl was like, I have herpes now, and she basically said everybody has herpes, it's just a matter of an outbreak. And I was about to screenshot it and send it to Dorian. So my point
Somebody posted that on Facebook?
Oh yeah, you'd be surprised, man. You'd be surprised the stuff people post on Facebook.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that could go down a whole other road. I'm gonna like restrict judgment for that. But so I hear what he's saying. Like, but that's the thing. I think that the way that the church teaches sexuality, it's just this. They don't go into the depths of it. They don't talk about.
Yeah.
They don't tell girls like there is no condom or IUD for feeling used and discarded. There's no condom for that. Everything. All the metaphysics are taken out. All of the emotional, psycho-spiritual stuff, it's all taken out. And then everything is whittled down to this physical, encounter. And your physical pleasure buttons, yada, yada, yada. Yep. And all the other ramifications of that are taken out. And then people are left with absolute wreckage in their lives. So I just think that the way that, again, this is kind of like, I'm kind of critiquing both sides here. I think the way that Christians deal with sex and sexuality is just in this very prudish, embarrassed, threats of hell, threats of hellfire. The fact of the matter is a lot of your Old Testament heroes were not pure sexually. They had multiple wives, they had multiple concubines on top of that, and even with that, they still were not satisfied with what they had. And the Bible's extremely explicit about that, and it also shows you the wreckage that follows. Everybody knows that if you're completely loose with your sexuality, there is almost a guaranteed metaphysical or physical wreckage that would ensue, and a restriction of your pleasure. I remember being in high school and having a girl have pregnancy scares. Believe me, it was not it was not a pleasurable time. You know what I mean? Like, so just like the real practical, real world side of sex and sexuality and the ramifications of it, I don't think that Christians eschatologize everything, meaning they push everything to be about God's judgment at the end of the world, and they strip away all the the physical and the metaphysical sides of it, and the depths of what sexuality is and what it means. Conversely, and the Bible says a ton about
That's
both.
very interesting. But yeah, you're
The
right.
Bible says a ton about both. Enjoy the breasts of the wife of your youth, and yada yada yada. Very graphic descriptions in Song of Solomon about body parts and bodily functions and things of that nature. So the Bible does both the physical, the metaphysical, and the eschatological. And there's this sort of holistic understanding of sexuality right from the beginning of the Bible. But the way it's taught is you're pure or you're clean and you're unclean and you're going to hell or you're going to heaven and you touch yourself and blah blah blah. It's the end of the world and you're the worst person in the world and da-da-da. And you put this burden on people that they can't. But on the other side, what I've noticed is a lot of, oh, don't worry. It's sort of an overreaction to the and you know, now girls are being told that they can be just as aggressive about sexuality as men and da-da-da. It's like, sure, you can. And dudes are going to be like, sure. Yeah, babe, you be a liberated woman, so now I can have a bunch of sex with you and have no commitment to you and make you feel absolutely. I cannot tell you how many young women have come to me crying because they felt absolutely used and abused sexually. And then you've got these 13-year-old girls sending pictures and all this stuff and you know, not having a childhood because they're trying to keep up with their, you know, so it's very, so what I would say is that, you know, I think my perspective is always, and I've always taught the boys that God wants to maximize your sexual pleasure. And the point is not that you're sacrificing actual pleasure to get to heaven, but that you are sacrificing lesser pleasures on earth to maximize your pleasure potential on earth with proper sexuality. And that would be one person that you're committed to and that you grow with, and that you can combine the physical and the metaphysical and the natural and the spiritual with. Like that's the ultimate goal of trying to get there with a person. It takes a lifetime to make that type of a connection with a person, and so if it's presented that way, I think that that's not only good strategy, but it's also biblical. But I also think, you know, the idea that that you can have as much unrestricted sex as you'd like and that there aren't massive consequences to it, I also think is just short-sighted and honestly a little bit immature, because it's just not true. There was another thing that you said that I thought was, but again, I don't understand why the church does not, because the Bible says so many things about sex and sexuality, why the church doesn't have these frank and honest conversations. What was sexuality like in your...
They didn't talk about it at church. They just talked about it at home. And at home, it was very much like, basically, once you get married, you basically have all the sex you want. But for now, you can't do that. It's about protecting your purity. Purity. That's all it was. Purity. And then, you know. But it was kind of like this weird, I don't know. It was like this weird thing because somehow I got the message that a woman should be sexually aggressive because that's what guys want. I don't know where I got that message, honestly. And she should be okay with anything because that's what guys want, and that's what you want to be is what guys want. But it was weird because it was like this really strict environment, but then there was that, just the two cultures kind of collided in a very weird way in my own mind.
I remember talking to, you were there, young lady, about like her, there was some sexual abuse in her past as well, but there was also, she was saying, you're told over and over again, don't have sex, don't have sex, don't have sex. And she's like, now I'm married, and here I am on my wedding night, and then all of a sudden I'm supposed to pivot. And I was like, whoa, that was mind-blowing.
I was so glad she said that, because it made, I was like, okay, that helps.
See, I was never in the youth group thing. So I never went to youth group. I never had that type of messaging. Like I said, my mom gave us one message about sex and sexuality. It was about AIDS because one of my best friend's mom had AIDS, and so like my mom freaked out, and so she sat us down and made us watch this 2-hour documentary on AIDS, and then that's when she had the sex talk.
She was a nurse.
She had the sex talk with us, but she never, it's funny because she never threatened us with hell. She basically said, you know what the Bible says, you're supposed to wait till you're married. She never threatened us with hell. She basically said, but I know you, so use condoms, yada 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 yada.
It kind of felt like it was one of those things where it was like, it's a stain that you will never get out.
I think girls get that message a lot in the church.
Yeah.
Because they package it as purity.
Yeah.
So then the obvious implication is that you're going to be some impure, especially dirty person, especially unclean.
Yeah, it was weird because, well, for one thing, the whole you wear white on your wedding day or off-white if you're not a virgin. So then there was like that whole thing. It's like, are you just going to lie and wear a white dress? Or like, as long as you literally didn't have sex, you could have done a bunch of other stuff, but you literally didn't have sex, so go ahead and wear the white. So it's like, you're wearing white, but because you don't want to wear the yellow or the off-white. But it was funny
I had never even heard of that until I met you.
After I got divorced, I kept wondering if you were going to want to be with me because I had been with my husband. He's the only other person I had been with, but it was like, I thought that you would be like, no, I don't. But it's kind of, it's like completely crazy. But yeah, that was like, I remember being very worried about that.
Yeah.
Which is weird. I mean, like, if you compare your history and mine, but for guys, that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's more okay than.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, this is coming from a dude's point of view, but it's even, this is to back up his point, it's even worse for females in that culture because you never hear guys talking about being pure. I mean, sometimes, but it's mostly put on the girls to be pure and whatever.
I'm in this group where I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I'm in this group, and there was this one person that put a post, and they said, I had sex with my husband before we got married. Am I going to hell? But you couldn't comment. Yeah, I don't know why you couldn't comment, but I felt so sad for the person because I was like, oh my gosh, like.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's what it's like. It just seems like it's one of those things that it's never going to be forgiven.
Well, yeah, and it's because of these control mechanisms that that happens in the church. There are these control mechanisms because all the pitfalls that can happen with unrestricted sex and sexuality, but they pile all of these guilt and fear mechanisms onto it instead of saying you can actually have higher pleasure if you do it this way. It's got guilt, fear. Yeah. And it's like I told the boys, like, yeah, I mean, there's STDs, there's this, there's that, there's pregnancy scare, there's baby mama drama, like, but the emphasis was you actually have more pleasure in your life for a longer period of time this way. That was kind of the pitch. And I think when you look at the Bible, you look at Song of Solomon, things like that, and it's got these two young people at their prime of their life, and they're very energized sexually, and there's a celebration of sexuality, but then there's that little don't rush to love before it's time.
Yep.
Which is basically saying, all right.
Don't awaken love before it's time.
Yeah, don't awaken love before it's time. And so it's like, okay, kids, like, we get it, it's hot, it's great, but, just keep in mind, there's a time and a place for it, and don't awaken it, don't cross that. I think that's a brilliant way to handle it, like, but we've turned it into something completely Frankensteinish and monstrous, and so it's had a massively destructive impact on people.
For sure.
And I also think the opposite has the opposite worldview that strips away all of the personhood and just strips it down to a physical melding of bodies in order to pass on decent destructive. If we've talked about the horrible fallout of pornography and its effect on women, and also the effect of pornography on the minds of young men and
our society as a whole.
Our society at large. I mean, that's obvious. And if you want to look more deeply into that, we can send you the link to the debate that we had about it. The last one I thought was really interesting is, I'm steering down the road of my life is gone. Is this where I belong? Is it wrong to not believe in right and wrong? It's a brilliant question.
Yeah.
Because if you answer that question, that means if you ask that question, that means you want to make it. Yeah, I think, the latest attempt has been Sam Harris, in the moral landscape. He tried to try to find some way from an atheist worldview to come up with some form of objective morality, and he got raked across the coals, not by Christians, but by other atheist philosophers, because you can't get an is from a not, and yada, yada, yada. And, you know, Harris's basic idea was, look, if we can all agree on a certain goal, then there are objective means of accomplishing that goal, which is true. And so, you know, so it's like, if you want to, you know, have a chicken sandwich, then you objectively need to have bread and chicken and whatever. So you could objectively say that's right or wrong in the sense of that's going to get you a chicken sandwich or not. And so Harris's idea was, well, we'll just say human well-being and flourishing is the goal. And if we can all agree on that goal, then morality does become objective. The problem is that we cannot all agree on what human well-being is.
Nope.
Right? Like one major example is the abortion discussion.
Yep.
If you're remotely familiar with embryology, then you know it's a human being, and you know you're killing a human being. You know, I was listening to Michael Moore. I love Michael Moore, God bless him, but he's like, we all know that a fertilized egg isn't a human being. You're wrong. It is a human being. And so even from that perspective, it breaks down. It's, you know, like I think Bertrand Russell said it the best. He said, I don't like the Holocaust, but I'm not sure it's wrong. You know, basically because he's an atheist, and Bertrand Russell is sort of the last of like the old school atheists.
Yeah.
Which a lot of my atheist friends haven't read many of his things.
Right. I remember
Read
that.
the free man's worship. Yeah, it's hard that you know, like I gotta like throw away my Nietzsche and my Bertrand Russell and read Sam Harris because the guys are not familiar.
Yeah.
Even like anyway, but
Surprising.
So if I was an atheist, that would be just a hill I wouldn't go to. I'd say, no, there's no such thing as morality, but this is a morality that I prefer, and I have no problem imposing some aspects of my morality onto people. Like if you're a rapist, I don't care. I'm going to impose my non-rapist morality.
Exactly.
On you. So,
Yeah.
you know, sorry, you know, as the people like, but this is what I'm saying. Like, I think both sides have there's like a deficit in nuanced thinking. People say things like, well, you can have your own morality, it becomes wrong when you force that morality onto people. I don't know. I'm glad that, you know, John Brown and other abolitionists and many of the Northern soldiers forced their non-slave holding morality onto people.
Right. If you were being kidnapped, you would hope somebody would force their morality on your kidnapper.
Correct. Right. You wouldn't say, well, hold on.
Or if it was your child, you would
Put
be
the
like,
gun down.
well, let that kidnapper have his own sense of morality.
Right. There are times when we need to enforce morality onto people. When it's an actual ultimate good to enforce your morality onto other people, and it's actually an objective evil to not do so.
Right.
But that's another long discussion. I really like this song. I felt being in we've been swimming in atheists for about a year and a half, 2 years, and so I've really come to, you know, when I'm listening to this song, I am seeing faces and remembering discussions and seeing people like crying, upset. You know, and so I know that there are many hundreds, thousands, millions of very honest people who are in this situation, in this chapter of their life. And it's probably one of the biggest things that has changed me from being in our community is the complexity of atheism, as far as people's, you know, how they're grappling with it and all the rest of it, and people's frustration with God so this was a pretty emotional song actually, because it was such you feel for the guy, And
I read Psalm 91 on our channel, just, with the coronavirus going around and stuff. And, like, if you go through and you read the comment section, you can see there are people that are like, they're not, like, it's not their thing, but, you can see that some people are grappling and some people are like, this is bullshit. There are other people that are like, this isn't my thing, but I really needed this, and, so... Yeah. You can see that.
Yeah, you see the whole spectrum, because one guy was like, this is bullshit, and then other people like, what's wrong with you? Like, and that whole conflict. But I think both groups of people, even within that space, are conflicted.
Yep.
Like there's something that made him comment on that with that type
That's exactly what I said.
With that type of hostility.
Yep.
And
that's exactly what I thought. This was very emotional to me. It was what you're saying and all the people that we know. It was, for the longest time, because I grew up in the church, like, you could not say things like this, like, ever, under any circumstances. And I know, like, he basically said something like, when he's right here, sick of this bullshit, people calling me a sellout because I hopped to Christianity so strongly that I fell out. Now I'm avoiding questions like a scared dog with his tail down. Okay, so when it said that part, I'm assuming he's avoiding the questions that people are saying. So you went back, and which group of people is he avoiding the questions for?
Well, the next line is because they're looking at me like I'm hellbound.
Right, so it's the Christians. He's avoiding the Christians and their questions. But for me, it was like flipped, and I avoided asking the questions to the Christians because I didn't feel like people had answers. But I really, really, really liked how he was just raw and real, and I loved that he had cursing in it. I loved that he said everything that was on his heart, and that it seemed to me that he didn't hold back, and he said exactly what he was thinking and what he was feeling. Even like here, now I'm supposed to bow my head and close my eyes and somehow let the Holy Ghost arise. Sounds like a poltergeist. Like just, part of you would be like, oh my gosh. But then none of it made me say, oh my gosh, in this whole thing. This whole thing was just like, wow, okay. I felt like when somebody finally, like a release, like somebody gets to release something, and I felt like he got to release something by putting this out, and I think that it's really good for him, and I think that it's good for him on his spiritual journey also. I think this was the healthiest thing that he could do in his journey.
Yeah, the other thing that I I forgot to mention was a very good line. He said, man, what if Jesus was a facade? That would mean that the government's God. And that's another one of those presuppositionalist arguments that I believe is true, but that it's very hard to make because people get very emotional about it. Like, that's another thing that surprised me. It's just a fact. The Soviet Union was an atheist state.
Yep.
And for some strange reason, there are people that want to believe that nobody's ever killed in the name of atheism. Mm-hmm. And to this moment, I have no idea.
Well, I think it's because...
Like, if I was an atheist, that wouldn't bother me, of course.
No, I know, but I think it's because they go so hard after the Crusades that it's like, to believe that because they always feel... I always hear people, like, when they talk about the Crusades, I feel like that they are above what the Christians did in their Crusades. I don't believe what we did was right. I don't think that it was good at all. But I always feel like people are like, you people did the Crusades. So when you realize, wait a minute, your people did something like that too. It's like, well, I can't be as bad as those nasty Christians. Right. Well, turns out we are all sinful.
I was talking to my buddy Mark, and he was saying the Chinese aren't that bad. I'm like, you see what they're doing to those Muslims? Like, what are you talking about? Like, they're putting them in concentration camps, raping these girls. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is, and it was, it's called militant state atheism. Mm-hmm. Like, we didn't make up the term. It's
right.
Like,
yeah.
And it was so funny. Like, I had a guy and we're talking. I'm like, yeah, bro. Like, he's like, that's never happened. What are you talking about? I said, no, for real. And so then I gave him the sources and all that, and then he just went, well, that's militant state atheism. That's not atheism. I was like, but here's the point. You
could say that's militant Christianity that did that. It's not Christianity.
Correct. No, true Scotsman. But the Declaration of Independence says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights given to them by their Creator. The reason that the preamble to the Declaration started with that was they were trying to give a theological justification for why they were rebelling against the government.
Oh.
So the point was, God gave us these rights, and they're inalienable. And so since God gave them to us, the government can't take it away from us. That was the entire point of the preamble. It wasn't this, everybody's created equal, because they obviously didn't believe that about people like me. It was this, because people were very religious at the time, this is our theological justification for why we have to rebel against you. Yes, you're the king, but there's a king above you that gave us the rights. Well, if there is no God, then the government is the one that gives you the rights. And in effect, the government becomes God. As a matter of fact,
you sounded like Peter when you said that.
I was talking to one of my friends. We were talking about abortion, and he says, the government has, and we were talking about the Holocaust. He says, well, the government has granted Jews humanity, and we have not granted babies in the womb humanity. And I was like, whoa, stop. Did you hear what you just said? What are you talking about? But this is a ramification. He's right. And again, this is why I said, like, this is a very honest actor, because there is no... There are very few neo-atheists that are going to make that line. If Jesus is a facade, then that would mean the government's God. No, they're not going to come out and say that like that if they're trying to win some debate and argument. That's why a lot of Christians use Romans 1, suppressing the truth and unrighteousness, yada, yada, yada. I do not believe that applies to every single unbeliever. It applies to people that it's talking about. There's nothing in the text that says, this is a guy who, to me, is really, really struggling, and he's really pointing out what he thinks are the weak spots, and that is a very, very scary one. You know what's interesting? I was having a conversation, good friend of mine, deeply love him, probably one of my favorite people I've met on the channel, and the big thing is, like, the government should have done something. The government, because he's. And I said, yeah, and he's kind of, I think he's upset at me because I'm saying that I'm calm and I'm fine, and I definitely
about what?
The whole coronavirus situation.
Okay,
I didn't give a context. And I said in the last fireside, like, I'm at peace. I feel stabilized. Like, God's got it, and we're gonna trust Allah and fire a camel, whatever. And he's just like, you're just completely fine. And his thing was the government should have acted quicker, and now a bunch of, and so it's like, he's looking at the government to get us that stability. I'm looking beyond the government, so I'm like, the government failed here. It's terrible. They should clean it up, and hopefully we learn lessons from this. We're gonna get out of this, inshallah. Hopefully we learn lessons, have new normals, etc. Maybe cut out a little bit of our military budget and like put it in the pandemic response type of thing. But it's just think it through. Like, forget about arguing with me or being upset about me, but it's true. Like, who gave you your rights? Where do rights come from? And when we talk, 200 years ago, when you talked about rights and you're saying, I have basic human rights, where did they come from? If you say that they came from God, then there's no government that can take that from you. But if you say it came from the government, then the government giveth and the government taketh away, especially in the context of a democracy, which is essentially mob rule. Where what if a bunch of white folk get together and say, actually, those black folks, they really aren't really human. Or we shouldn't grant them human rights. I mean, there's never been a time in American history, by the way, when there hasn't been a group of humans that were not looked upon as equal as everybody else. There's never been a time in American history where every single human being was treated with the exact same dignity, and it's certainly not happening today. And no, I'm not talking about putting kids in cages. I'm talking about dismantling children in the womb when we know that they're human beings, they're Homo sapiens. Those are facts. The scientifically minded people that I talk to, they go, yeah, of course it's a human being. Yeah, it is. It's just, and then they laugh, they go, it's just not the same as me and you, though. And it's like, don't you realize that same condescending little grin and laugh and chuckle is the exact same reaction that the slave master had when you were talking to abolitionists about black people? Was the exact same thing. Don't you realize that there were scientific journals that talked about how we were a lower grade of Homo sapien, more close to apes than to human beings? Don't you understand that? Like, there's never been a time in America where all human beings were looked upon as the same, and it's because the more and more you drift from the idea that God made us all in his image, then the government essentially becomes your God. And I think I'm a big Bernie fan. And I'm a big, social democrat, I guess is what they call it. But that was kind of the danger with, absolute communism, is that the government basically becomes deified. It becomes, it becomes a god in a sense. And he's obviously well read.
Yep.
And he's obviously looked at history. You don't need to look far. Look at the last 100 years. Look at World War II. Look at what happened. Look what came of the Bolshevik Revolution. Look what came of the Nazi. I mean, all those things happened when the government became a de facto god.
Yep.
And so, I mean, and Stalin, Lenin, those guys knew what they were doing. That's why they had Yelosky and all those guys destroying churches, sending people to re-education camps, trying to de-Christianize and de-religionize their area. Because they knew that as long as there was a higher court than their court, that they were never going to be able to have this absolute rule. So they knew what they were doing. And they understood very clearly that's exactly what they were trying to do. Get rid of God so that we can occupy that space.
Yep.
So anyway, I was just very, very impressed with this song. It's probably the most honest song I've ever heard in my life as far as dealing with the God question.
Oh.
And the struggles of an apostate.
Yeah, it was really good.
And anytime I see something like this emotional, I always have so much confidence that he's going to find his way back.
Yeah, and this was done in 2015.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to know, where's he at now? The release date was 2014, excuse me.
Yeah, the scripture says you'll seek me and find me when you seek me with your whole heart. I will be found by you, says the Lord. And so
to me, this kind of stuff is part of seeking with your whole heart.
100%.
Being honest about how you actually feel, what you really think about God, what you think about the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
And I still felt like there was still some reverence.
Me
even
too.
though he was...
Me too.
Cussing up a storm, yada, yada, yada. I still felt like there was an air of reverence in the way that he was talking about,
I did too.
About God and things like that. So, this is an extremely long review. I'm very, very sorry. But it's a rap song and it's lyrics and all the rest of it. If you are in this situation, I'm not going to preach to you. I'm just going to say what I say all the time on Firesides when people ask me questions. I always say, everybody who wants God will have him.
Yep.
So, everybody who wants God will have him, and everybody God wants, he will have. So that is very, very good news, and just keep seeking and keep he was like pounding the doors a little bit.
I know.
So
I really think it was actually a beautiful piece. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
For me, it's an 11.
100%. It's an 11.
Yeah.
It's an 11. Really, really good song. Good video too.
Yep.
Very good video.
Yep.
A lot of poetry.
I couldn't see the whole video because I was really watching the lyrics.
Yeah, I was going back and forth.
Yeah, this is definitely on the playlist. That's for sure.
Inshallah, we have. We don't get copyrighted.
I know. If we do, it'll be up on Vimeo.
Yeah, it'll be on video. Sorry for the long review. Type 73. Actually, type 777 if you went all the way. I think we owe somebody a shirt for the previous video.
Well, I was going to ask you which video was that because I don't remember which one it was. You said.
I'll go check. Vin out.
Sorry out.
Gone.
Yo. Fuck anybody I might alarm. Life is a tour, I sit and ride along. Taking some notes and then I write the songs. I'm staring down the road, my life is gone. Is this where I belong? Is it wrong to not believe in right and wrong? My mental state is fucking me up and I cried upon while asking you for some answers, but we don't have that type of bond. Now my desire's gone, and with the way that I've been living lately, if I died right now, you turn the fire on. Sick of this bullshit, niggas call me a sellout, cause I hopped to Christianity so strongly then I fell out. Now I'm avoiding questions like a scared dog with his tail down. Feeling so damn humiliated cause they looking at me like I'm hellbound. What story should I tell now? I'll just expose the truth. I'm so close to the fucking edge, I should be close to you. But who the fuck are you? You never show the proof. And I'm only fucking human, yo, what am I supposed to do? There's way too many different religions with vivid descriptions, begging all fucking men and women to listen. I can't even beat my dick without getting convicted. These ain't wicked decisions, I got different intentions. I've been itching to get it, I've been giving assistance, but the the whole fucking system is twisted. Now I'm dealing with this backlash because Marcus isn't a Christian, and I've been told that my sinful life is an addiction, but I can't buy it. It's just too hard to stand beside it. I need an answer, humans can't provide it. I look at the earth, the sun, and I can tell a genius man designed it. It's truly mind-blowing, I can't deny it. Is heaven real? Is it fake? Is it really how I fantasize it? Where's the Holy Ghost at? How long does it take a man to find it? My mind's a non-stop tape playing and I can't rewind it. You gave me the Bible and expect me not to analyze it? I'm frustrated and you provoked it. I'm not reading that motherfucking book because a human wrote it. I have a fucking brain, you should know it. You gave it to me to think, to avoid every useless moment. It was a mission that I had to abort, cause humans be lying with such an inaccurate source. It's gonna be hard to put me back on the course. Next Jehovah's Witness to come on my porch, I swear I'm slamming the door. A lot of folks believe it though, but I'm not surprised. Humans are fucking dumb, still thinking that Pac's alive. I ain't trying to take your legacy and torture down. I'm just saying, I ain't heard shit from the horse's mouth. Just sheep always telling stories of older guys who were notarized by you and you finally vocalized. Now I'm supposed to bow my head and close my eyes and somehow let the Holy Ghost arise? Sounds like a fucking poltergeist. Show yourself and the boom is done. Every rumor's gone, I no longer doubt the shit, you're the one. I'll admit that my sinful ways were stupid fun, and all my old habits can hop on top of a roof to plunge. I donate to a charity that could use the funds. Fuck the club instead of bitches, I'd hang with a group of nuns. And everyone I ran into would know what I came to do. I wouldn't take a step unless it was in the name of you. I hate the fact that I have to believe you haven't been chatting with me like you did Adam and Eve. And I ain't seen no fucking talking snake unravel from trees with an apple to eat. That shit never happens to me. I don't know if you do or don't exist. It's driving me crazy, send your condolences. This is me reaching to you, so don't forget, if hell is truly a pit of fire and I get thrown in it, I'ma probably regret the fact that I ever wrote this shit. My gut feeling says it's all fake. I hate to say it, but fuck it, shit, I done lost faith. This isn't a small phase, my perspectives all changed. My thoughts just keep picking shit apart all day. And in my mind, I'm